A person who reveals desire too quickly is a person who quietly surrenders power. In the very instant you announce what you crave, you hand the world the blueprint for controlling you. They know where to press, how to delay, and what to dangle in front of you until you bend. The Stoics warned us centuries ago that craving what lies outside our control is the root of suffering, yet most of us mistake our openness for strength. We tell ourselves that confessing our longings makes us brave, when in truth, it often makes us predictable. And a predictable person is an easily controlled one. But here's the paradox. Desire itself isn't weakness. The weakness comes when desire is exposed, when it leaks out as hunger others can exploit. The one who contains desire, who channels it inward with discipline, becomes untouchable. Freedom isn't found in declaring what you want. It's found in refusing to let what you want own you. If you're ready to step into that kind of freedom, if you're seeking clarity, strength, and the discipline of Stoic wisdom, then please subscribe. Think of it as committing to your own growth, to walk a path of resilience, wisdom, and self-mastery. Desire revealed is leverage given. The moment you make your hunger visible, you place yourself in a position where others can use it against you. Imagine walking into a negotiation and confessing, "I'll do anything for this job." What happens next? You've told them where to press. They know you'll tolerate long hours, unfair treatment, even disrespect, because you've announced your desperation. Or picture whispering to someone that they mean everything to you. Suddenly, the silence they give you carries more weight than their words ever could. By admitting what you can't live without, you hand them the power to make you restless, anxious, or compliant. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." When you openly display what you crave, you give away that freedom. You hand over the exact lever that can move you, and whether others pull it out of malice or by accident, you're still no longer in control. What makes this truth so uncomfortable is how natural it feels to confess desire. We think it's authentic, even noble. Society tells us that vulnerability is connection, that saying what you want shows courage. And yet, time after time, those who broadcast their longings too soon find themselves disappointed. Marcus Aurelius observed, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. What you want exists in the outer world, in the hands of other people, in the unpredictable currents of fate. The moment you reveal it, you tether your emotions to what is beyond your command, and in doing so, you weaken the only thing that truly belongs to you, your own mind. The pattern repeats everywhere. A worker pleads with a manager for recognition, and instead of being valued, they're given just enough attention to keep them desperate for more. A friend pours out their need for belonging, and suddenly others test that need, taking advantage of their willingness to always be available. A lover proclaims devotion too quickly, and instead of deepening the bond, the air shifts, because certainty kills mystery, and hunger too loudly expressed diminishes value. Seneca wrote, "He who is a slave to his desires is more wretched than he who bears the yoke of another." It isn't just about being ruled by others. It's about being ruled by your own exposed cravings, because the leash is fastened around your neck the second you let the world see it. And here lies the paradox. Desire itself is not weakness. To want is human. To long for growth, for connection, for achievement is natural. The Stoics never asked us to kill desire, but to discipline it, to keep it within the walls of the self, guarded and guided. Carl Jung noted, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." If your longing erupts from you without awareness, without restraint, then you are not steering it. It is steering you, and when others notice, they quickly learn how to steer you too. What you mistake as fate or bad luck is often just your own openness being redirected by those who understood your weakness. Think of how different it feels to be in the presence of someone who needs nothing from you. They seem calm, composed, unhurried. They don't beg for approval, and that indifference creates a kind of gravity. People orbit them, wondering what lies behind that composure, sensing a strength that doesn't bend to outside influence. Contrast that with the person who wears their desires on their sleeve, always asking, always hoping, always reacting. One radiates freedom, the other radiates dependence. Aristotle once taught that the more you know yourself, the more clarity there is. Self-knowledge has no end. Knowing yourself means you can guard what matters, rather than scattering it into the hands of anyone willing to listen. The truth is, most of us have at some point trapped ourselves with our own mouths. We've spoken of our goals, and in doing so, felt the weight of others' expectations crush us when we didn't deliver. We've admitted our fears and watched people unconsciously test them. We've declared our dreams, only to find resistance rising from those who felt left behind. Each time, the pattern was the same. Desire revealed became leverage surrendered. And the more we repeat it, the more powerless we feel. To live with discipline is not to live without desire, but to master the way it is expressed. The Stoics knew that silence can be a form of strength, that not every thought, not every hunger, not every ambition must be placed on display. In silence, desire remains yours, contained, sharpened, a source of drive that fuels action rather than dependence. To speak it carelessly is to scatter it into the hands of others, but to hold it inward is to turn it into focus, resilience, and strength. So the next time you feel the urge to announce what you long for, pause. Ask yourself whether exposing this desire will give you more freedom or less. Because the truth is, desire revealed is leverage given. And the one who learns to hold it with patience, with composure, with discipline, will always stand taller than the one who reveals it too soon. Most people reveal their desires thinking it's a sign of strength, a badge of authenticity that proves they're honest and open. They say, "I just really want this," and they believe that by putting their heart on the table, they're showing courage. But honesty without discipline isn't strength, it's exposure. It's like walking into a room of strangers and handing each one of them the keys to your house. The words may feel noble as they leave your lips, but what you've really done is surrender the very thing that was yours to protect. The Stoics warned us again and again that what we reveal without control becomes the starting point of our suffering. Epictetus reminded us that the first step toward mastery is not in gaining the approval of others, but in mastering our own impulses. And yet, how often do we confuse the impulse to speak with the wisdom to remain silent? Think about the subtle trap built into openness. You believe that by showing where you are tender, where you ache, you're making a bond. You think people will honor that trust, but in reality, what you've done is place your well-being in their hands. The moment you say, "This matters to me more than anything," you've given someone else the power to withhold it, to test you, to control the rhythm of your emotions. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." True bravery isn't in blurting out every longing, it's in having the strength to hold it, to carry it without scattering it for others to toy with. To keep what matters guarded isn't deception, it's wisdom. Why does this mistake happen so often? Because openness feels good. It feels cleansing, like dropping a heavy weight. And for a brief moment, you feel closer to the one who hears you. But that feeling rarely lasts, because what was sacred is no longer fully yours. Once spoken, your desire becomes something others can delay, deny, or manipulate. Marcus Aurelius warned that we suffer more from our own opinions than from the world itself. When you reveal desire, you're not just giving others a tool. They may never use it against you, but your own mind will. You'll begin waiting, watching, anticipating their response. Their silence will now feel louder, their words heavier. Suddenly your peace depends on them, not you. Carl Jung offered a striking observation. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But when you broadcast every longing without thought, you're not becoming yourself. You're becoming a reflection of how others react to your words. If they laugh, you shrink. If they question, you doubt. If they approve, you swell with false confidence. You are no longer rooted in who you are, but in how others perceive your desires. And that isn't authenticity. It's dependency dressed up as honesty. We live in a world that celebrates vulnerability as if it is always noble. We're told that to share every thought, every fear, every craving is to be real. But the Stoics would argue that being real isn't about putting your soul up for auction. It's about aligning your life with reason and discipline. To speak without restraint is to abandon that discipline. It's like planting seeds in every patch of soil you find, never noticing whether the ground is fertile or barren. The seeds may sprout, but most will be trampled, and the few that survive will no longer be yours alone. Consider how often relationships crumble under the weight of overexposed longing. One person pours out endless affection, hoping it will create closeness, but instead it breeds distance. The mystery fades, and the bond weakens. Or think of careers stalled by eagerness. Someone declares how badly they want the promotion, and suddenly their superiors hold all the cards, aware that they can stretch this ambition as far as they want. And here's the paradox. Silence feels risky. We fear that if we don't voice our needs, no one will notice them. But silence doesn't erase desire. It protects it. It keeps it within your control, so you can act on it with calm focus instead of scattering it recklessly. Jung warned that the things we leave unconscious will rule our lives, and openness without reflection is exactly that, unconscious. You speak because the desire pushes its way out, not because you've chosen the right time or the right person. That is not mastery, that is compulsion. The path of Stoicism doesn't demand that we hide forever, but that we choose wisely what to reveal and when. Just as a skilled builder doesn't show the blueprint of a structure before it's ready to stand, so too should we guard the blueprint of our inner world. What you reveal too soon can collapse under pressure. What you guard, however, grows stronger. So the next time you feel the urge to say, "I just really want this," stop and ask yourself, does speaking it make me freer or weaker? Because openness without restraint is not authenticity, it's surrender. And the one who learns to hold their desires quietly, to act on them with composure rather than announce them in desperation, is the one who rises above manipulation. The world may praise constant vulnerability, but wisdom lies in discernment. Not every truth must be spoken. Not every hunger must be confessed. The strongest connection you can build is the one with yourself, the ability to know your desires deeply without handing them away carelessly. That is where real honesty begins. Hunger is always visible. Even if you try to hide it with words or gestures, people can sense when you want something too badly. It leaks out in your tone, in your body language, in the way your attention clings to what you desire. And once it's seen, it changes how others treat you. Mystery doesn't invite attack, need does. Show desperation, and you create an easy target. Not because everyone is cruel, but because human psychology naturally responds to hunger with control. Seneca once warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." The one who spreads themselves thin, who shows everything and hides nothing, loses the depth of their strength. In the same way, when you scatter your energy in craving and exposure, you lose the gravity that makes others respect you. Think of how this plays out in ordinary life. A worker desperate for recognition starts staying late, not out of principle, but to be seen. Instead of commanding respect through excellence, they begin performing for approval. A friend who constantly seeks reassurance becomes predictable, easy to manipulate, because others know just how to withhold comfort to keep them chasing. Even in love, when one person makes their hunger too visible, the balance shifts. Attention that once felt genuine begins to feel like control. What started as openness now becomes dependence, and dependence always invites testing. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that external things have no true hold on us unless we give them one. The problem is, hunger gives that hold before the other person even asks. The truth is that people project onto visible hunger. They assume if you want something badly, they can shape you through it. It might not even be conscious. A manager promises the possibility of promotion, not to deliver it soon, but to keep your loyalty burning. A partner tests your devotion by withdrawing affection, just to see how much you'll tolerate. A group of friends pressures you into conformity because they sense your need to belong, and each time the same pattern repeats. The more visible the hunger, the less freedom you hold. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." When you act from hunger, you're not living from your own soul, you're reacting to others, avoiding the silence where your true motives are revealed. And people sense that. They use it, sometimes unknowingly, but always effectively. Worse than being manipulated by others is how hunger manipulates you. At first it feels like drive, like energy pushing you forward. But if unchecked, it turns inward and consumes you. You stop working for excellence and start working for applause. You stop speaking from conviction and start tailoring your words for approval. You stop moving with principle and begin calculating every move for validation. What once felt like purpose now feels like performance. And performances are always exhausting because they demand you play to the crowd rather than to your inner compass. The Stoics warned of this trap, the slow erosion of self when your life is measured by how others respond to you. Consider the weight of constantly performing. You walk into a room and instead of standing in your own presence, you measure every glance, every gesture, hoping to be accepted. You work harder, not for mastery, but for recognition. You seek affection, not out of genuine connection, but out of fear of loss. This isn't strength. It's slavery disguised as ambition. Epictetus taught, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And you cannot master yourself when your hunger dictates your choices. The very thing you long for begins to own you, pulling you like a leash. It tells you when to smile, when to plead, when to wait. And because you've made that hunger visible, others know exactly how to tug that leash when they need to. But what happens when hunger is contained? When it burns silently instead of spilling into the open? The whole dynamic shifts. People sense a quiet composure they can't penetrate. They see effort without begging, strength without need. Instead of wondering how to control you, they wonder how to understand you, and that wonder creates respect. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." Hunger is the opposite. It's what you do without power. Show it, and you give away control. Hold it, and you keep your power intact, even when circumstances push against you. This is not to say we should have no desires. Desire is natural, it is human, but when desire turns into visible hunger, it shifts from being your fuel to being your weakness. The more loudly you crave, the more others test you, and the more they test you, the more you begin to bend. It's a cycle that strips away resilience, leaving you raw, restless, and easy to move. True resilience is found in self-restraint, in knowing what you want, but refusing to let that want be your cage. Aristotle taught that self-knowledge is the beginning of wisdom, and knowing yourself means recognizing when your hunger is leading you into traps, when your own longing is writing the script for your exploitation. The discipline of Stoicism doesn't demand silence as a mask, but silence as a safeguard. It teaches us to guard the fire of our wants, to let it burn as fuel for action, not as smoke that blinds others and ourselves. When you hold your hunger quietly, you cannot be baited, delayed, or used. You may still want deeply, but that want no longer writes your story in public. It stays with you, sharp, focused, untouchable. People can guess, but they cannot control. They can test, but they cannot move you. And in that gap between hunger felt and hunger revealed lies your freedom. So the next time you feel the urge to announce, to confess, to make your craving visible, remember this: people rarely attack mystery. They attack need. Hunger on display makes you a target, but hunger contained makes you powerful. Let your desire guide your steps, not your speech. Let it fuel your actions quietly, because when you can feel deeply without showing desperation, you cannot be manipulated. You no longer perform for the world, you act for yourself. And that, in the end, is the truest form of strength. Society praises openness. We are constantly told that speaking your truth, declaring your desires, and putting everything on the table is the definition of bravery. The idea sounds noble, almost romantic, that the loudest voice is the most courageous. But if you look closer, you see that this belief is more illusion than truth. Courage isn't in broadcasting your hunger to the world. It isn't in exposing your inner longings for others to evaluate, compare, or manipulate. Courage is in restraint. It is in holding steady when the urge to confess becomes almost unbearable. It is in keeping your desires within, not out of fear, but out of strength, because you know that what is guarded remains powerful, and what is scattered becomes weak. Think of how many people walk into a room carrying their need like a sign on their chest. They speak too quickly of what they want, hoping the world will reward their transparency. But rarely does it. Instead, the more visible their craving, the less respect they receive. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Happiness, power, and courage are not things you beg the world to deliver. They come from within, from the quiet composure of someone who doesn't need external permission to feel whole. When you walk into a room with that mindset, you carry a presence that others can feel. You become the one who doesn't ask, who doesn't chase, who doesn't beg, and that makes you untouchable. There's a paradox here that often goes unnoticed. People think vulnerability is always noble, that by exposing their desires openly, they are proving courage. But much of what passes for vulnerability today is not bravery. It is dependency disguised as authenticity. To say, "I want this more than anything," is not courage. It is placing your worth in the hands of another. And once you do that, you're no longer free. This kind of courage is quiet. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need to. It is the stillness of someone who looks as though they already have everything, even if they're still building, still striving, still becoming. And that stillness unsettles others. Because while they cling to approval, you walk as though you need nothing. While they expose every hope and wait for validation, you carry yourself like someone whose validation was already secured within. Seneca captured this spirit when he wrote, "The greatest wealth is a poverty of desires." To walk into any space with no visible need is to walk in rich, even if the world hasn't given you its rewards yet. Notice how differently people respond to those who seem content. They respect them, even if silently. They become curious, even envious. They wonder, what does this person have that I don't? And what unnerves them most is that they cannot find the answer because it isn't in material possessions or in obvious desire. It's in an inward discipline, a hidden source of strength that refuses to beg. Aristotle once said, "Courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees the others." And courage in this sense doesn't come from expression. It comes from control. It guarantees your freedom because it ensures you are never too dependent on what lies outside of you. The illusion of courage in expressing desire is seductive because it feels bold in the moment. Saying what you want gives you a rush, a sense of relief, as though you've proven something to yourself and to the world. But that rush fades quickly, and in its place comes exposure. Others now know where you are soft, where you can be moved, where you can be tested. True courage feels different. It doesn't come with a rush or an audience. It comes in silence, when you resist the easy comfort of spilling everything. It comes in patience, when you act with purpose instead of impulse. It comes in composure, when you move through the world as if nothing outside you can truly disturb what lies within. This is the courage the Stoics lived by, the courage not to fight battles for validation, but to stand untouched by the need for it. It is harder, quieter, and infinitely more powerful. So when you feel that pull to declare your desires boldly, to show the world what you long for, pause and ask yourself if this is courage or if it's simply craving dressed up as bravery. Remember that the world doesn't respect the one who begs, but the one who looks as if they already hold everything they need. The former reveals weakness and becomes dependent. The latter embodies courage and becomes free. And freedom, as every Stoic understood, is the only ground on which true strength can stand. There is a strange and undeniable power in indifference, not the cold indifference of apathy, but the disciplined indifference of someone who feels deeply and yet refuses to be ruled by it. To want something with intensity but reveal nothing is to become ungovernable. Others look at you, searching for clues, trying to decode what drives you, but they find no clear answer. And that uncertainty unsettles them. People are far less disturbed by someone who openly shows their hunger, because hunger is predictable. What truly rattles them is the one who can want, yet remain still, the one who can burn inwardly, yet appear untouched outwardly. In that stillness you become unreadable, and in being unreadable you become powerful. When you carry yourself with indifference, you shift the balance of control. The person who appears desperate is always at the mercy of others. Their emotions are tied to outcomes, their moods dictated by approval, their strength dependent on whether things go their way. But the one who moves as if nothing is owed to them, as if nothing outside themselves can make or break their spirit, holds the upper hand. Indifference unsettles people because it forces them into their own imagination. They can't tell what you want, so they begin to fill in the blanks themselves. They wonder, why is this person not reacting? What are they thinking? What are they planning? And in that silence, their own fears surface. They project motives, they anticipate moves, they prepare defenses against threats you may not even have considered. Meanwhile, you remain steady, not because you are plotting endlessly, but because you are unbothered by the noise. Carl Jung once noted, "Where wisdom reigns, there is no conflict between thinking and feeling." True indifference harmonizes both. It allows you to feel deeply while still thinking clearly, without letting emotions pull you into chaos. Look at any environment, workplaces, relationships, social circles, and notice who gets tested the most. It is rarely the one who stands calmly detached. It is almost always the one who makes their longings too obvious. When you declare openly, "I need this opportunity," or "I cannot live without this person," you invite trials. But when you act as though your life is full with or without what others offer, the trials diminish. Not because the world suddenly becomes kind, but because people hesitate to test those who don't seem to need them. Aristotle wrote, "The ideal man bears the accidents of life with dignity and grace, making the best of circumstances." That is the heart of indifference, not to stop caring, but to carry yourself with dignity, regardless of outcome. What makes indifference powerful is that it gives you options. When you're consumed by need, you trap yourself. You wait anxiously for someone else's decision, for their validation, for their acceptance. But when you cultivate indifference, you regain freedom. You're no longer bound to one outcome, one person, one path. You can walk away, and walking away becomes your strength. Epictetus taught, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." When you release the judgment that one specific outcome defines your worth, you stop being disturbed. You act, you move forward, you adapt, but you never beg. And make no mistake, people notice. They notice when you are not easily moved. They notice when you do not react to provocation, when you don't collapse under pressure, when you don't cling to them for validation. And that notice transforms into respect, even if it's never spoken. It makes you harder to manipulate, harder to predict, harder to undermine. Because what can anyone do to control a person who shows no visible dependence on them? Jung believed that the deepest form of power is self-possession, being anchored in your inner world so firmly that no external tug can pull you away from yourself. Indifference, in this sense, is not detachment from life, but attachment to your own center. This doesn't mean becoming a stone or pretending you don't care. True indifference isn't about shutting off emotion. It's about mastering expression. It's about choosing when, how, and to whom you reveal what matters to you. It's about appearing full whether or not you receive what you desire. This balance terrifies others because it makes you unpredictable. They don't know if you're invested, if you're watching, if you're walking away. And that uncertainty keeps them cautious. Seneca wrote, "A wise person is content with their lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what they have not." That contentment is not laziness, it is strength. It is the shield of indifference that allows you to engage with the world without being enslaved by it. So ask yourself, what happens when you no longer flinch at loss? When you no longer cling to outcomes? When you can want but not beg? You gain something rare, freedom. The freedom to act without fear, to speak without calculation, to walk without hesitation. And in a world where most are enslaved by visible hunger, that freedom feels dangerous. It is the power of the one who cannot be bribed, cannot be threatened, cannot be cornered. It is the quiet strength of indifference. The Stoics never taught us to kill desire. They taught us to master it, to hold it within so that it fuels us but never controls us. And that mastery creates a presence that is rare in any age. A presence that feels calm, grounded, and beyond reach. Indifference, in its truest form, is not the absence of caring. It is the absence of enslavement to care. And once you master that, you stop being a pawn moved by others and become a force that moves on your own terms. Those who achieve the most rarely announce it. They don't feel the need to broadcast every step, to gather applause for plans not yet realized, or to beg for recognition before the work is done. Instead, they move quietly, allowing their actions to speak in a way words never could. In a world obsessed with noise, silence becomes a shield. What is silent is harder to counter, and what is hidden is harder to destroy. The Stoics understood this discipline well. They believed that the more you focus on inner strength and outer composure, the less vulnerable you become to the storms of fortune or the opinions of others. When you build in shadows and act in silence, you make yourself unshakable because no one knows what to strike. Think about how much energy people waste on broadcasting their ambitions. They announce their goals, describe their plans, and constantly seek validation for what they intend to do. But by doing this, they invite interference. When you show your entire blueprint before the foundation is laid, you give others the chance to criticize, discourage, or even sabotage what has barely begun. Epictetus reminded us, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." Notice he said do, not declare. The act itself matters. The declaration, unless carefully chosen, often weakens the power of the act because it exposes it to unnecessary eyes. There's a reason silence has always carried a kind of gravity. The quiet worker, the calm leader, the disciplined builder, these are the people who leave others guessing. Curiosity builds around them because their movements are not obvious. They do not brag about what they will do. They arrive with results already in hand. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." Announcing your goals places them outside your control, into the minds of others who may not understand, who may resent, or who may simply wait for you to stumble. But guarding them, keeping them close until they are realized, preserves your control and ensures that when you reveal something, it cannot be easily undone. There's also a psychological truth at play here. People tend to overestimate those who remain silent. When you don't explain yourself, when you don't reveal every detail, others begin to project their own assumptions onto you. They may assume you are doing more, planning more, or capable of more than you actually are, and that projection itself becomes power. Contrast this with those who expose everything. Their constant updates, explanations, and declarations create no mystery. They may seem open, but openness without discernment often leads to fragility. When setbacks come, the world watches them falter because they made their journey public. But the one who works quietly avoids this weight. Failures are lessons learned in private, not public spectacles. Successes arrive without warning, surprising those who never saw them coming. Seneca wrote, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." That road is easier to walk when you don't carry the burden of other people's expectations on your back. Silence lightens the load. Operating quietly also protects you from one of the most dangerous traps: dependency on praise. When you announce your every move, you begin to crave acknowledgement. You want people to cheer you on, to affirm your progress, to reassure you that you're doing well. But that dependence erodes discipline. Instead of focusing on the work itself, you begin to work for the response. Silence breaks this cycle. When no one knows what you're building, you work for yourself alone. The validation comes from within, not from the applause of others. Aristotle wrote, "The energy of the mind is the essence of life. That energy is squandered when it is scattered outward for approval. In silence, it is preserved, concentrated, and directed toward creation." And notice how the strongest figures in history often embodied this principle. Their power wasn't in constant display, it was in restraint. They didn't reveal their plans until the plans had already matured. They moved step by step in shadows, and by the time others realized what they were doing, the work was complete. It's not about secrecy for its own sake. It's about protecting your momentum. Noise interrupts rhythm. Silence protects it. Jung understood this as well when he said, "In all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order." To outsiders, your silence may look like chaos, like absence, like drift. But to you, it is order, it is deliberate, it is construction taking shape without interruption. The discipline of building in shadows and acting in silence is not about hiding forever. Eventually your results will speak, and when they do, they will speak louder than any words could. The difference is that by then, the results are undeniable. No one can dismiss them as fantasy or sabotage them as premature ideas. They exist, and they carry the weight of surprise. Seneca reminded us, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." One of those blessings is the strength to guard what matters until it is ready to stand on its own. So ask yourself, what might you achieve if you stopped announcing, stopped seeking, stopped explaining? What could you build if your energy wasn't diluted by noise, but concentrated in silence? The truth is simple. When you operate quietly, the world cannot interfere. The results arrive before anyone has the chance to stop them. And those results, revealed only when solid, are stronger than anything that was broadcast too soon. In a culture addicted to attention, the rarest form of power is silence. And the one who learns to build in shadows doesn't just protect their vision, they guarantee that when it arrives, it cannot be ignored. To want is natural, to crave is human. Desire itself is not the enemy, it's part of what gives life energy, direction, and meaning. The Stoics never told us to kill desire, they told us to master it. They saw desire as fire, useful, powerful, even necessary. But like fire, it can destroy when uncontrolled. Contained properly, fire warms, strengthens, and builds. Uncontained, it consumes. The same applies to the longings inside of us. When you pour them out too freely, the heat escapes, scattered into the air, leaving you weaker than before. But when you hold desire close, protect it, and feed it with discipline, it becomes a force of momentum, driving you forward in silence while others burn out in noise. This is the paradox most people miss. They think that to feel something strongly, they must express it strongly, but raw expression often dilutes the very energy it was meant to carry. Think of someone who tells everyone their plans, their dreams, their goals. At first it sounds inspiring, but soon the words lose weight. People stop listening. Worse, those dreams now belong partly to the audience, subject to their judgment and interference. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be." B1 Desire works the same way. Waste no more time declaring what you want. Build it. Contain the fire so it fuels your actions, not your announcements. There is a quiet strength in restraint, not repression, but refinement. When you feel the surge of longing and yet remain composed, you prove to yourself that you are its master, not its servant. Think of how nature works. Rivers flow with power not because they scatter water in every direction, but because their force is contained within banks that guide them. A dam doesn't stop water from existing. It harnesses the energy so it can generate strength. In the same way, when you hold your desires within, they gain intensity. You don't lose passion by containing it, you concentrate it. Seneca said, "No person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they do not have." He wasn't urging us to extinguish desire, but to direct it, to ensure it does not spill into every corner of life uncontrolled. What happens when you reveal too much is the opposite. You begin to bleed energy. Each confession, each exposure, each uncontrolled outburst disperses the very heat that should have stayed inside you. It's like carrying a torch in a storm. The fire flickers, weakens, and dies out because it was never shielded. But keep that flame behind glass, and no wind can touch it. The person who feels more than they reveal always surpasses the one who reveals more than they feel, because their energy is not wasted. It is stored, sharpened, and unleashed only when the time is right. Consider how often people sabotage themselves by scattering their fire. They share their ambitions too soon, and the criticism of others cools their drive. They confess their cravings too loudly, and others learn to withhold what they seek, turning it into a tool of control. They display their hunger too openly, and it invites mockery or envy that drains them further. But the one who holds steady, who keeps their fire close, cannot be manipulated. Others may sense the heat, but they cannot touch the flame. That makes them unpredictable, untouchable, and dangerous in the most disciplined way. Containment also reshapes how you experience setbacks. When desire is scattered into the world, every obstacle feels like humiliation, because your longing was public and your failure visible. But when your fire burns quietly within, setbacks are fuel. They are added wood, not gusts of wind. You recalibrate, you redirect, but you never lose power because no one else holds your flame. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Containment gives you control over that reaction. Instead of collapsing, you absorb the moment into your energy, and the fire grows. It's important to remember that containment doesn't mean coldness. To feel deeply and yet remain composed is not to be unfeeling, it is to be strong. It means your emotions do not spill out to weaken you, but stay within to strengthen you. Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Containing desire is this inward awakening. It is the act of looking into your own heart, acknowledging the fire there, and deciding to carry it with discipline rather than letting it escape unchecked. The world will always encourage expression. It will tell you to speak, to share, to broadcast, to expose. But what the world doesn't tell you is that each time you do, you give away a little bit of your fire. The Stoic path urges the opposite. Guard your energy, contain your hunger. Use it to act, not to announce, because power doesn't come from how loudly you declare what you want. It comes from how steadily you can pursue it without showing desperation. To want is natural, to crave is human, but to contain that craving, to hold it like fire behind glass, is divine. It makes you focused, disciplined, and ungovernable. The one who reveals too much